Welcome back to the West Block. Well, with 2013 just around the corner, we're going to mix metaphors and look over the hill as to what we're all going to be talking about in the year to come. And joining me to help me do that, three of the brightest young journalists on Parliament Hill. Marie Vastel of Le Devoir, our own Amy Minsky from thewestblock.ca, and Aaron Wary of Maclean's Magazine. Welcome to you all. Good to have you here. Marie, let me start with you. Look over that hill in 3 months, 4 months from now. What are we all going to be talking about?
I think we're going to have to watch for the public service cuts, because we now know that they've cut more than half of the public service workers that they were supposed to announced in the last budget. So I think we're probably going to start seeing the effects of that on the ground. We're going to start seeing services be cut, people waiting longer for certain services, and I think that's going to make its way back to Ottawa. And then the government will actually probably have to answer more questions on what they've been trying to avoid answering questions on for so long. I think the other thing we should watch for is relationships with provinces. There's the gun registry that is still before the courts, that's being appealed in Quebec, who want to get the data, and Ottawa is still refusing. There's also refugee healthcare costs. A couple of provinces are keeping the tabs on how much it's costing them to pay for these healthcare costs that Ottawa stopped paying for, and they very might well send the bill to Ottawa. There's also the EI cuts that are affecting seasonal workers. Are they going to ask for money on that? OAS, are they going to ask for money on that? So I think that there might be a couple of issues between provinces and Ottawa for sure. Okay,
Aaron, how about you?
A few things. You know, following those service cuts, we're going to have another budget, obviously, to look forward to, conceivably another omnibus budget bill to deal with. This government also has to appoint another parliamentary budget officer, or conceivably has to appoint another parliamentary budget officer. So,
because his term's up in March.
Exactly, and that's a position that isn't yet defined and is pretty contentious at this point. I mean, we've gotten to a point where the Conservatives sort of openly scoff at Mr. Page and his work. So are they going to fill that job? Who are they going to fill it with, and where does it go from here? You know, it's a pretty pivotal job within Ottawa and within Parliament, or it could be. And it could be a fairly definitive move at this point to see how they move forward with that and whether that position gets sort of the credibility and the independence that it needs.
And on this show just a couple of weeks ago, Kevin Page was here suggesting maybe that position won't be filled because he doesn't know of anybody who's coming up the pike. Amy, what are you looking at?
Well, we can't forget that as everybody's discussing all these issues, we're going to have a new leader asking questions in the House on it.
The Liberal Party.
Yeah, so the Liberals, I think, are going to be a big topic this year, with obviously choosing their new leader, Justin Trudeau. That's where most of the attention's been so far. But how much difference will it make in the political landscape? I think that's one of the big questions we'll be looking at.
Well, let me ask you that, Mary, because the Liberal leadership is one of the markers that's out there. If the polls are to be believed at this point, Justin Trudeau could be a game changer, to use that awful expression. But the polls are showing that under his leadership, the Liberals might come back and even form government in 2015. How much stock should we put in these polls at this stage of the game?
Well, there was another poll when a certain Michael Ignatieff became the Liberal leader, and he was supposed to beat Stephen Harper, and we all know how that happened. So I don't know how much we should trust it. I mean, you ask people, if there's this new person and this new situation happening, would you enjoy it? And they're almost all the time going to say yes, right? So, I mean, until we actually see what happens, I'm not sure we should be convinced that Trudeau is the savior of the Liberal Party, especially when we see all these missteps that he's been having in only 2 months of a leadership race. I think his victory isn't already assured, and I also think he might not win. So another bright young journalist who works on the Hill with us told me, you know, the Liberals did elect Stéphane Dion, so I'm not sure that he can celebrate just yet.
It really does bring up the question of opposition, and Aaron, let me throw this to you, that the other side of that coin, of course, is Tom Mulcair and the NDP. Looking ahead to 2013, what is the big challenge for Tom Mulcair here? Can he really entrench that party as the ongoing official opposition, government in waiting?
I think he can, depending on how he moves in the next year. I think this is a fairly pivotal year coming forward for Tom Mulcair. You saw sort of in the last week of Parliament a certain fire come into him, I think, in that last week in the House. He sort of seemed to ditch the speaking notes and sort of try to deal with Harper a bit more passionately. And I think that was an interesting move on his part. But now, you know, they've come forward and they've made their sort of objections clear to how this government functions. But they need to sort of start putting some meat on the bones, start saying exactly what a new government an NDP government would do. So they have a couple things coming up. They have a premier summit, or not a premier summit, a provincial leaders summit. They have a policy conference. So there's a few things early in the year for them that they can sort of focus on, but they need to make their case to the Canadian public at some point that, yeah, okay, we don't quite like the Conservatives, but here's what we would do that would be different and better.
And they also, I think they have to start proving that they're more than just a Quebec party, because they've just got that massive Quebec caucus, and with Tom Mulcair's comments on Dutch disease and stuff, he's sort of thrown a wedge into some of his relations, I think, with some of the provinces. So he really needs to find out how to spread himself across the country.
Yeah, like they can probably win a government without Alberta. They probably can't win a government without Saskatchewan, without Ontario, without BC. Exactly. And sort of that's, so what are those policies, what are those things that they can put in the window that are going to appeal to sort of those audiences at this point?
Well, and they're not guaranteed to keep all those seats in Quebec either. I mean, it could just be a feu de paille, as you say in French. I don't know how you say it in English. But
flash in the pan.
Yes. I mean, no one knows what's going to happen in Quebec. With, like we said, I mean, there's a new liberal leader, and let's not forget the Bloc might not be dead. Who knows? So I think, yeah, definitely Mulcair's challenge will be to try and not have this wedge between the West and Quebec, and keep Quebec happy, but also not alienate the rest of Canada, because one of the Bloc MPs tabled a bill to remove the Clarity Act, and the NDP MPs from Quebec are going to have to take a position on that, and they are not all agreeing on it, because some of them say 50% plus one is enough. Others say it's not necessarily what the Clarity Act says. So that's going to be a challenge for sure. And then on natural resources as well, Mulcair is going to have to kind of keep everyone happy as well.
Let me get your best 25 seconds each on the challenge that lies ahead next year for Stephen Harper and the Conservatives.
Regaining the reputation as a responsible manager of the public purse. The F-35 fiasco has really damaged that reputation, I think, and we have the shipbuilding contracts coming up. So regaining the confidence of the people on their management, on their economic management, I think hinges on turning over the F-35 procurement and managing
and getting it right.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, I think for Harper, it's down to hoping the economy stays stable. If the housing market starts to go a bit wobbly, if the economy starts to struggle, this is a government that has pinned so much of itself and its brand on the fact that the Canadian economy is doing fairly well. If that starts to go wobbly, if deficits become harder to eliminate, if they have to cut more services, things start to get really difficult for this government, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and keeping his backbench happy with all of that, because some backbenchers are not happy that they have reoccurring deficits and service cuts. They don't all agree. Even those omnibus budget bills. Even David Wilkes from BC was uncomfortable with the fact that it was such a massive bill and it wasn't being debated. So I think he's going to have to watch his own MPs and the discontent in his own caucus as well.
Okay, if I didn't say it before, the three smartest young journalists on Parliament Hill, Aaron Weary of Maclean's Magazine, Amy Minsky from the West Bloc, and Marie Vastel from Le Devoir. Thank you all very much. Have a great New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year.